Okay, good morning. My name is Enos Harris, hearing officer for San Francisco Public Works. Nathan Rodis is the clerk of this hearing. This hearing is being recorded, and your presence and participation are documented as part of this process. This public hearing is being held to consider Hope SF Potrero Phase 2 project, request for exceptions to subdivision code and subdivision regulations for a phased notice of completion and deferral of certain improvements to a subsequent acceptance action. My job as a hearing officer is to gather the facts from the hearing and from the hearing item, listen to your testimonies, and help our Director of Public Works make determinations. I will not be making any decisions today. Instead, I will forward the findings from this hearing to make my recommendations to the director. The director will make the final determinations. When the director's determinations are made, the department will notify you. Please be sure we have your current contact information on file. If necessary, we can contact you in the future regarding the items you are here for. The hearing will proceed as follows. I will ask Public Works staff to speak first and present the case. Then I will allow the appellant to speak. Then any member of the public or witness who wants to speak. If necessary, the department can address any comments, and then the property owner or appellant if that person has any rebuttals. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to speak. The clerk will monitor the time for all speakers. When you hear the first bell, it will mean the speaker has 30 seconds left to speak. A louder second bell will signal that the time is up. Comments and questions should be addressed to me and not to the department or the applicant. If you cannot finish your comments within the allotted time, you may submit written testimony to me by the end of this hearing. If I feel that a question is warranted, I will ask the question. After all comments are completed, I will close the item. We will now begin hearing order 208620. May I have Public Works make its presentation?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Can you see my slides okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good morning. My name is Shauna Gates, and I'm a project manager with the Public Works Infrastructure Task Force. Today, I'll be presenting Order 208620 for the Hope SF Potrero Phase 2 project, presenting the developer's request to defer completion of certain public improvements beyond the first notice of completion, or what we call an NOC, and acceptance action by the Board of Supervisors to a future NOC and acceptance action. The top image on this slide shows the pre-existing Potrero Terrace and Potrero Annex public housing sites before construction began, as well as the contemplated full build-out on the bottom image. Hope SF Sunnydale is a major joint development agreement project that will replace the existing housing sites with new affordable and market rate housing, new streets, utilities, community open spaces, and retail over the next 10 to 15 years and in phases. It's anticipated the project will produce up to 1,700 housing units, including 800 replacement and other affordable rental units and 800 market rate units. Public Works is responsible for managing the subdivision mapping, design coordination, permitting, construction inspection, and acceptance of the overall public infrastructure improvements on behalf of city agencies. The planned phases of development of this project are shown on this map. Phase 1 of the project included new utilities and streetscape improvements on 25th and Connecticut Streets to support the first affordable housing vertical building, also known as Block X, and this was accepted last year, July of 2022, by the Board of Supervisors. Phase 2 is currently under construction and includes vertical lots A and B. It's bounded by existing 25th, 26th, Connecticut, and Wisconsin streets and creates one new block of public right-of-way known as Arkansas Street. The subdivider is required through their public improvement agreement to complete horizontal public improvements, otherwise known as required improvements, to support the vertical parcels. These public improvements generally include new sewer, water, electrical lines, roadways, streetlights, trees, and pedestrian facilities. The PIA defines procedures for Public Works to deem the work complete through notice of completion and pursue formal acceptance of the improvements by the Board of Supervisors. In February 2021, Public Works issued a street improvement permit for the Hope SF Potrero Phase 2, and work on public improvements began. The subdivider is requesting approval to phase the notice of completion and acceptance actions for Phase 2 as shown on this map. Since a portion of the required infrastructure shown in pink and green as subphases 2A and 2B are complete now and ready for notice of completion and formal acceptance. The remainder of work in areas shaded blue within subphase 2C is anticipated to be complete and ready for formal acceptance in Q1 or Q2 of 2025, which will align with the completion of vertical block B, which is currently under construction. This slide describes the 8 requested deferrals included in subphase 2C to be completed in 2025 and allow a partial NOC and acceptance of what is complete now in subphases 2A and 2B. The deferred work would go through a subsequent NOC and acceptance process once it is complete. Deferrals include a portion of curb and gutter, sidewalk, pavers, 1 curb ramp, trees, landscaping, irrigation, street furnishings, roadway striping, street lights, power infrastructure, 1 full block of new right-of-way, and final record drawings and Q&A maps. The reasons for the deferral include either the area is inaccessible due to the vertical project, or the street space is currently in use by the vertical contractor. The improvements are impractical to build because of the significant grade difference between new sidewalk grade and the pre-existing vertical lot B, which is currently being raised. Or the improvements would likely be damaged if they were installed now due to the ongoing vertical construction. This deferral of work requires approval of a formal exception because the subdivision regulations, Appendix A, Section 7D, states the city shall only consider full, complete, and functional public streets for purposes of city maintenance and responsibility, also known as the formal acceptance action through the Board of Supervisors. The subdivider is asking for NOC and acceptance of a portion of improvements not defined as a full complete street. The process for approving formal exceptions is outlined in the subdivision regulations section 3 and section 1712 of the subdivision code. Exceptions to the code and regulations can be granted by the Public Works Director as long as the director finds the following: that applying certain codes would create practical difficulties or unnecessary hardships to the project, that the deferrals would not be material detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to other properties, that the deferrals are not contrary to the project documents or city regulations, and also that the deferrals are not in violation of the Subdivision Map Act. Public Works has reviewed the requested deferrals and confirms that the above 4 requirements of the Subdivision Code, Section 1712, have been met. Public Works has consulted with impacted city agencies, including the City Attorney's Office, the SFPUC, and SFMTA, and recommends that the Director grants the 8 exception requests and allow deferral of certain improvements to a future notice of completion and acceptance action, and proceed with the partial notice of completion and acceptance for improvements completed to date, aka or also known as subphases 2A and 2B, subject to certain conditions. On this slide, you'll first see general conditions that would be applied to all 8 of the exceptions, which are that the director would retain adequate security equivalent to 100% of the deferred improvements until those deferred improvements are complete and they are determined completed through a notice of completion, that the subdivider will complete the deferred improvements prior to requesting a temporary certificate of occupancy for vertical block B, and that the subdivider will coordinate a punch list walk with the city and resolve any required repair work. Additional specific conditions that would be imposed on exceptions 1 through 8 are shown on the second half of this slide and subsequent slides. For exception number 1, an additional condition would be that the subdivider will maintain an accessible path of travel in and around the deferred area with an acceptable walking surface until the final sidewalk improvements are completed, including monitoring of areas identified in Public Works punch list dated 7/20/23 to ensure the concrete cracks within areas open to the public do not become a tripping hazard, until the repairs are complete. For exceptions 2 and 3, additional condition would also be that the subdivider would maintain an accessible path of travel around these incomplete improvements and ensure that the empty tree wells as well as empty landscaped areas are level with adjacent sidewalk improvements. For exception number 5, the subdivider will maintain temporary signage and striping to the satisfaction of SFMTA until final signage and striping are installed. Exception number 7 has these additional conditions. The subdivider will operate and maintain the installed portion of streetlight and pedestrian lighting systems consistent with the photometric study approved by SFPUC in September of this year. The subdivider will indemnify and hold harmless the city for any claims related to lighting levels and subdivider's installation and interim operation and maintenance of the streetlight and pedestrian lighting system in a form acceptable to the city. The subdivider will schedule final testing of the streetlights, pedestrian lights, and irrigation controllers after the switch from temporary to permanent power with city agencies and resolve any required repair work. For exception number 8, additional conditions would be that the subdivider will submit and obtain city approval of redlined as-built marking all permitted changes to the plans through requests for information, instructional bulletins, field orders, or other means for work included in this first NOC for subphases 2A and 2B before Public Works would grant the first notice of completion. Subdivider will complete this final record drawings to an acceptable format before the vertical developer requests TCO of vertical block B. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. We also have a representative from the subdivider Bridge Housing, Cyrus Hoda, on the call who can answer questions as well. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Are there any, would the property owner representative like to speak? Okay. Are there any public comments on this item? Okay. If there are no public comments, I am closing this hearing.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.